Well, good morning, everyone. This is our first UASA laundry room of 2025. And I bet you we're in two different camps here, right? There's some of us who feel like ASTI just ended 3 days ago, right? Our annual conference. And then there's the other people in the other camp that feels like it was months ago already. And that's the weird thing about time is it messes with us, or our feelings mess with time. Time is constant all the time, and it could break our business. It can also help set our business up for success. So, coming back from ASTI, I've heard some people have 3 or 4 notebooks of notes. That would be a futile gesture on my part because I can't read my notes after I write them down. Um, so that would just make me bitter. But people, we come back with our ideas, and now we've got to implement it. And again, time can slip by us. And so that's why I brought on my co-facilitator, Ginny Seeley, who is very good at mastering time. And so we thought, if you haven't done it yet, go grab your um, ASTI notes and bring them with you. You don't need to talk about them with us. But if you've got your ideas and your brainstorms, bring them here to the meeting. And then I thought that we could ask Ginny to kind of talk us through how to process all this information that we got back from ASTI. And if you didn't come to ASTI, I bet you're starting to think about your business and where you want it to head in 2025. And that can get overwhelming as well. And I have some friends. Last thing I want to say is I have some friends that put everything on this list. Like, I want to read this book, and I need to clean out the back seat of my car. They just put that all on there, and it just becomes grand ideas that might take 10 years down to something that you need to do tomorrow. So, Janie, share a little bit about yourself in case people don't know who you are.
Well, I'm Ginny Seeley, and my husband and I own Cavalry Appliance Service over in New Bern, North Carolina. And we have had a life-changing, momentous occasion overnight. We got 6 inches of snow, and the whole town has lost its mind. So it's really funny. It's happening to everybody in the South right now. So we actually aren't running any service calls today. They are shoveling the co-working center parking lot. So that's the other piece of us. We have a co-working center, and so we like to be a little business incubator there and give people a place to have their Google address when they're not ready to have their own big commercial space yet. And through that, we've developed some programs to help people get their businesses started and get organized and have business strategies. So that is Outcome Academy. So we kind of have our hands on a lot of things and built 3 businesses in 3 years, and it's been kind of a wild ride. So we have to stay organized with all of our goals or it gets too overwhelming. So kind of that's the idea that I wanted to bring today. When Doug was talking about how to organize stuff, I've taught this class at ASTI a few times with a big strategic brain dump. And so we can do whatever way you guys want to do this today. If you want me to walk you through the brain dump, we can, or we can kind of just talk through the different categories and share ideas within each category with each other just to help get some ideas flowing. So whatever way you feel like you guys want to take it.
Well, is there any questions or challenges that you guys have when you bring home ideas or try to strategize for the new year? Any issues or any good tips that you've created to overcome this overwhelming thing?
I can offer a tip.
What's that?
Um, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Google's Notebook LM project, but it lets you add custom data sources and kind of create like a little mini LLM, like ChatGPT, but just for the notes and sources that you supply. So I like to take all of my notes from, Google Docs or transcripts of things that were recorded and load them all in as sources and then have it tell me how to organize some of my
What?
execution.
Cut that out. It's called Google Notebook LM.
Yeah, Notebook LM, like language model.
Got it.
And it's pretty fantastic. There's even an option in there that It's probably not that useful, but you can turn whatever your content is into a podcast, an AI
Wow.
generated podcast. So you can
Wow.
passively consume it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty
that's good.
pretty great.
That's kind of goofy that you're learning from yourself, right? That's kind of strange, but I
I
like it.
mean, you're when you're in class, there's so much going on, and your mind goes so many different places that it can take a few attempts to, really harvest everything that was in the courses.
Absolutely.
Well, Todd, I think that's a really cool idea. I actually had people ask me when I was teaching this time at ASTI, could I record your class? And they had the recording on and it was transcribing everything. And then they were putting that into something to kind of reformat the notes into an organized fashion. So I would definitely ask permission before doing something like that. But that was a super excellent use of AI, in my opinion, to just help you take the notes that you want to take away from the class.
Mm, boy.
I have something like that as well. Claude and Enrique here is the one who told me about it, but they have little devices that can clip to the back of your phone, and it can record both like in the room, or it can record a two-way phone conversation, with consent, of course, just for documentation purposes, and it transcribes it, and it has its own, AI summary features. That's one of the ways that I generate some of the sources for the Notebook LM project.
What is that device that you just shared?
Plaud, Plaud, Plaud AI, and they have a couple. They have the one that attaches to your phone, and they have a newer one called a Note Pen. That's like a wearable, just like a small microphone that you can turn on to record.
That just blows up my my goal for this. One of my goals this year was to improve my handwriting. So that just seems dumb in sort of 1800s aspect here. So I
Yeah,
might,
that's like working on cursive.
yeah, I'm I might as well just buy myself a Plod, and
Only cursive you need is for your signature.
that's it. That's it. That's so funny. Well, thanks for the tips, Todd. How else are you guys analyzing your year and taking the stuff home from ASTI? What are you guys doing? How do you process it?
So, well, I can share for me, Doug, I need to compartmentalize things. If
Mhm,
it ends up just being my notebook full of a bunch of notes everywhere, I can't stay organized and I have to kind of turn them into tasks.
mhm.
So I break down things by team and then by operations and then by quality program, which is like KPIs. And then I kind of have broken it down into smaller categories from there. And then I kind of just move things into those categories that they belong in. So helps me just kind of tackle things and prioritize.
So team, what would be some examples of things that you would put under the category team for your business, Jenny?
So for team, I'm thinking about who do we need to add to our team? Who do we need to take away from our team? Kind of in an EOS frame, are the right people in the right seat?
Mhm.
Do we need to hire somebody that isn't even really like a W-2 person, but maybe somebody to clean the office or take care of the lawn or something like that? Any types of your attorney, your bookkeeper, any professionals that you need to add. So just thinking about humans and what they can add, or if they need to be shifted or downsized or moved or fired or whatever, that would all be
A-
actions around team.
anything personnel, employee, contractor, vendors, things that are going to fill your accountability chart, right? That's going to affect the way you lead your team.
Right.
And so what would fall under operations? The obvious, and then what's some of the less obvious?
Stuff like your space. I have a category called space, and that could be your work vehicles, it could be your actual office space, it could be opening a new office. It could be really anything to do with that, organizing your parts area, anything that has to do with where people are trying to get their work done. And then in the team piece, the other piece of team is not just who it is, but it's how are you keeping them valuable? Are you doing trainings with them? Are you going to send your technicians to a different service school this year or something like that? And then how to keep people on your team is also part of that. So I call that team engagement. And that is, it could be simple things like having meetings. It could be social events. It could be bonuses, salary structure. There was a whole class that you co-facilitated at ASTI about salary. And I think Joe said he took like 10 pages of notes in that class. So a lot of goals came back for that type of thought process. So, and then market, like who you're reaching and new services that you want to bring in, and then your marketing, how you're getting a hold of them, and then your sales process, any products or services you need to add or remove, anything around that, administrative operations, how you're closing your sales. So your sales operations, if you're attracting a lot of people, but you're not closing the deal, then might need to tweak something in that area.
So,
And
so for
vendor,
you, the idea of operations would be one of those categories would be efficiencies of the team, whether it's making as much money as possible in a situation or reducing waste, right?
yeah, I mean, in under operations, we have technical operations, administrative operations, sales operations, and supply operations.
Okay.
So anything to do with your parts vendors, I know you guys have a different way that you deliver your parts to your customers, so it could be evaluating that kind of process, but really anything around anything operational that you can think of, but then I have, just the way my brain works, I have to compartmentalize it into lots of different categories within there.
That's when I get lost, and I'm glad you're my friend and I can ask you the same question 4 different ways until I understand. But but imagine taking your notebook sometimes with a thought that isn't even summarized yet. You just wrote it all down, and then you're trying to remember a week later what the heck you meant to say there. But you come up with that summary statement. The idea of putting it in, for me visually, Jenny, when you first showed me this approach, was so cool because I might have like 35 items, and once I've categorized them, I start to look over it and go, I can do that like right now. I can make that happen like right now, and then check that's off the list. But if it stayed on that long, long list, I might, with ADHD, stay focused on these first 4 things that I'm trying to process. So even before you think about what you want to do, get it all sorted and separated. And
The
then
first
from
step is
there,
just get it
yeah,
out of your head.
just
Like just
get
do
it
a
out of
big
your head.
brain dump. So I like to look at each different category and then think about it and do a big brain dump. And then after I brain dump through all the categories, I like to sit there and walk through a SWOT analysis for each one. I call that a super SWOT activity. And then really thinking through, like, what are your strengths in that area?
Mm.
What are your weaknesses? What opportunities do you have? If you're looking at market, then that's a really great one for opportunities and threats. Like, who's a new entrant to your market? Who are you? What other things do you need to offer to set yourself apart? So it really helps you think through things and come up with ideas that you never even thought of before. And when you leave ASTI and your brain is swimming and you have all these notes, like you said, the best time to do that is as soon as you get home or even at the end of the sessions there. So it helps us to get, and we do this quarterly because things change and your business might change and your team might evolve, or you might open a different, like a sales area.
Then kind of powering up and taking that thing to the next level, of course, would be to meet with smart people in the industry, maybe a peer group. Uh,
Absolutely.
Potentially a room like this right now. If we were sharing our ideas, I'm sure if you're sharing it, you're willing, and all of a sudden inspiration can be drawn upon us. I didn't make that class, but what a great idea. That's something I need to explore. So the power of peer group and collaboration really creates a compound interest, which is pretty amazing. So
Yeah. So identifying, getting it all out of your brain is the first thing, but then you were kind of alluding to this, Doug, looking through and figuring out the things that are low hanging fruit. So then we prioritize by impact, urgency, and time. So you want to take a look at something. If it's going to take you 6 months to do it, you're going to break it down into some smaller steps, and you might not tackle that one this week, but then you're going to start plugging away and picking on things that might take you minutes to hours to do and put that on your list for the week, each week.
Right. I'm from the EOS kind of community, so there's to-dos and then there are rocks, right? These are goals that projects that take more than a few weeks to do. So I think we all should always have an ongoing rock, a goal that's got a bunch of parts to it. But it is cool to identify something that needs to be done, and we call that a to-do. Like it's a one step and you're done. And so when you're accomplishing those things, little to-dos, which are implementing something or fixing something, as well as working on a 3 month goal to accomplish a new project, that is moving the needle in your business. That's you really truly working on your business while you do all the rest, right? Putting out the fires, hopefully not literally for some of you guys, but making people happy and taking care of customers and your employees, right?
So Doug, you use EOS to organize everything. I would be curious to hear how everybody is organizing their tasks and their strategic planning in here. We use Monday, you use EOS. What other things are people using?
Great question, right? How
Anybody
are you
want to
tracking
share?
the progress in your building of the business?
We use EOS as well, but we use the software 90 to work hand in hand with that.
Those are like training wheels, aren't they? Because I use the same thing. I mean, EOS is a pretty complex system, but the 90-day, it's called 90-day, right? Or
No,
my
it's
90.
90.io.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Scott. When you showed that to me, I now have to be your best friend for life. And so if you're annoyed that I'm flying around you at ASTI, it's because you gave me that great networking tip to download that app. And literally my business runs through that app. So Scott, all our success has a lot to do with your willingness to always share and network with people around you. Todd, are you in 90 or are you just being really helpful in the chat by sending links?
I'm just being overly helpful.
I love
Like
that, Todd.
I'm incredibly disorganized. I I produce content everywhere. So it's like this is in a Google Doc randomly, and this is in another like random sheet somewhere, and this is on sticky notes on my desk. I've mostly gotten away from the sticky notes and into notebooks, so at least they're semi-organized.
Yeah.
And they mostly end up being a brain dump because by the time I'm done filling them, they're usually trash. There's nothing useful in there, but it helps me with my focus.
Yeah.
I use tasks, in the Google Suite, so it's always on the side of my calendar. But
Mhm.
all the comprehensive organizational systems, I don't know if they've failed us or we failed them,
Right.
but like we've tried to implement a software solution from Growth Institute, scaling up people.
Mhm.
We've dabbled in EOS, and we're like, this is too much.
Yeah.
So we always end up kind of pulling back, and then we go, okay, well, we need something. So then we're on Monday for a year or two, and then we're off that. We're on
Yeah.
Asana for a couple of years, then we're off that. Then we tried Notion, and we didn't like that. So what really comes back to is like, as soon as you have something that you want to capture, what's the easiest way to get it down? So
Mhm.
whether that's a physical pen and paper or the electronic equivalent of a pen and paper, just opening a new GDoc and brain dumping. And for organizing, what to actually execute. I think there were a lot of great suggestions, but my favorite lately, for the past couple of years has been pick charting, where you're just kind of categorizing things on a 4 square grid in terms of difficulty and impact. So then, you can look at the things that P is like possible, meaning you could do it easily, but there's not a big impact. I is like implement right now, low effort, high impact.
Nice.
C is challenge, meaning it'll be hard to do and relatively low impact. And then K and pick is kill, low impact, high effort. Like there's no reason to do it.
Ah,
Mm.
That's great. So in the world of EOS, they got the visionary, right, or the idea person, and then you've got the other person that makes those dreams come true and puts them into practice and process. Where do you think you would lie if you've not taken that test of whether you're more of a visionary or more of an integrator, Todd? Where do you land? When you go to ASTI, how do you process all that stuff that's happening over there between talking with people and sessions?
Uh, I end up with a lot of data. I end up usually talking about it with other people to kind of vet what's useful, what's not useful, what's really cool that doesn't make sense to implement right now. And so, that's where me and Rico kind of come in, because I think, I have a lot of ideas and some of them are absolutely terrible. And he's a really good idea filter.
Okay.
Um, and he's probably more of, a day-to-day integrator, things like that. Like, I'm
Got it.
organized, but I don't necessarily want to lead, every harebrained idea that I have.
Sure, sure. Boy, I bet you there's some great stories between Todd and Enrique about how that look at the eyes pop on Enrique, because
Great. I mean,
ultimately you're the one that's gonna say, I think this can get done and I'll make it happen, or hey, not right now because you gave me that other crazy idea that I'm working on, right? So how do you process between the two of you, Enrique, this crazy guy, Todd?
I think it's just kind of going back and forth. I mean, and for one thing too, like after ASTI, obviously Todd has notes for days, and I'm not much of a note person. I just kind of write down the ones that I'm like, oh yeah, those are the things that like I hadn't even thought of. Like those are the things I'm gonna kind of try to grow from there. But once we have that, we have a weekly manager meeting, just because at the size that we're at, everything moves so fast that you kind of have to make sure all the departments are on the same page. So, we use a kind of a living, always evolving document that we use for our manager meetings, that we put stuff, we let people put their ideas. Hey, because, something happens during the week, but when it comes to the meeting, if you don't write anything down, you're going to forget, and, whatever it is, but they can just add to that. And we talk about it, right, in our meetings. Then from there, being that we do a lot of the Google Suite stuff, like he was saying, tasks, if we put tasks on there, like let's say he says, hey, you should check into this. If he puts it on there and he assigns it to me, it goes on my task list. I don't even have to put it in there. It does it all for me. So that keeps me organized too. But I mean, most of it is just kind of going back and forth, and asking other people that it's also going to affect. Hey, how does this sound? Right?
Yeah,
Like, how does this? Because I mean, sometimes you have to remember too, not everybody has all the context that you have, maybe, as an owner or a manager, but they can have good input. So you kind of throw that out there. And if it needs context, you kind of give it to them, and then, brainstorm from there.
sure, sure. Would you two do anything different if you were back down to like three techs, or would you run your business the same exact way?
We've had a
Um,
lot of painful and expensive lessons over the years. And
man.
it's so funny. Like, my biggest person that I would butt heads with, ironically, isn't Rico. It's myself from a couple of years ago. Like, at any given point, I'm like, that dude was an idiot. And you try things. I think that's what is fun, is like we're all pretty open to like the lab environment where you try something, you adapt, you fire bullets before cannonballs. Though
Mhm.
sometimes we fire the cannonballs right away and they don't go well.
Right.
But we've definitely swung in different directions, and the decisions you make about like hiring and scaling during a COVID boom are completely different than when you get back to seasonality and
Mhm.
you have to find the right balance on staffing and things like that. um, going back from the COVID parts order mentality of I need to order 100 of these to I really don't need to do that. If I order them today, they'll be here tomorrow. um,
Yeah.
and then just in terms of business direction, uh, it's comparatively easy to explain and build your value to a cash paying customer. Like, they get it. They have a broken appliance, they value what you do, they value professionalism. You can
Mhm.
adjust your rates accordingly.
Mhm.
Uh, Warranty companies love all those things that you do that are extra, but
Mhm.
they don't value them often.
Mhm.
With a couple exceptions.
Mhm.
Um, And, when we were rapidly, scaling up and adding a lot of people, the biggest challenge is how do we get enough work? And then, post COVID, when things started returning to some kind of normal or whatever, we used to think was normal 2019 and prior, then we started focusing back on quality of work again, bringing things into balance and saying, we do too much warranty. And, the policies and procedures can be very cumbersome. The customers are often more demanding. They'll generate more recalls, especially when you're working on products with defects that can't be fully fixed or addressed. Even just the rash of calls that we get these days from all manufacturers, condensate dryers, consumer expectations are still a long way away from technology. But yeah, I do less warranty. I would build less on other people's land. Meaning like if you build a great company that relies on one OEM, or you build a great company that relies on one particular marketing referral source, you have a great next door business.
Yeah.
You're, one decision away from not existing. If all of your business comes through your Google My Business listing, you're one strike away from having your phones almost completely shut off.
Yeah.
So I would diversify, but make sure you're diversifying with the right kind of work. UASA always preaches, know your cost of doing business. And that is extremely difficult to do in a really accurate way that somebody else can't pick apart. But if there's no way that you can justify the warranty rate that you're getting from a manufacturer, especially when you factored in the claims that never do get paid or the parts that never do get paid out, if it doesn't meet your cost of doing business, don't do it. And if the industry all took that approach, they would be forced to pay competitive rates.
That's a lot of wisdom right there, Todd.
A lot of soapbox.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the community that we have, right? That we get a chance to learn from your mistakes, or the trials that you go through, right? Are there
mistakes?
Yeah, of course. Is there anybody in I mean, I'm looking around here. There's some people that have been doing this a long time and been through several wars. Is there anyone that has a question about what you're currently going through, a hurdle, a mindset about managing your business or working on your business? As well as anybody who has more tips to share.
So, well, I was wondering when Todd was, and I'm sorry I had to pop off for a minute. Todd was speaking earlier about just capturing everything and having it in all these different places. And so once you figure out what you want to do, and we were talking about different management systems, I know for me, it's my community, my small groups that I surround myself with that keep me on task for what I'm doing each week. But how are you staying on task with keeping the things that are important and not letting the minutia get in the way, and to really keep focused on working on your business instead of just in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Don't freak out. I'm not going to call on you like other facilitators, but Moses, how the heck do you stay on track, man? You're always in a van and your business is always thriving. And so I know you're working on it, in it all at the same time. How do you stay on track?
Well, I'm not sure I do.
Oh.
I think that's the real answer. I mean, I have the benefit that I have Isaac, and he has his strength, and I have mine. But reality, I don't. I mean, it's a constant struggle. But I think as long as we are trying consistently, we are at least, we feel like we're getting towards something. But it's progress, but it's still work. I mean, I'm not there.
Yeah.
I wish.
And so Isaac is the guy that will give you a call and your blood pressure rises a little because he's challenging you on something to say, hey, we got to get this done. Or is that right?
I don't know if to that level,
Yeah.
but I think it's stuff that happened throughout the day that really trigger those. But yes, it might be a phone call from him in that sense, but usually it's just stuff that happened throughout the day, dealing with the office or whatever it is, that kind of forces you. Because I feel like I always need to do something, which is my weakness in this case, is if you surround yourself with hopefully good workers, they're gonna constantly try to throw suggestions out or ask the questions. So it helps when you have the right people around you, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
I mean, one way is just going to ASTI every year and making that a priority, because then it forces you to work on your business at least for that week and to surround yourself with other people with so many different ideas.
That's a commitment, even if it's not comfortable for me. Even if I would rather not go, I Wednesday today, I was in BNI this morning. I didn't want to get up 5:30 in the morning and driving over there and when it was -3 outside. But I know Wednesday, that's what I do. I don't like it, but it's a habit that I kind of created, and I'm forcing myself into it. And that's the portion I'm actually good at.
Yeah. That's awesome, Moses.
Well,
Thanks.
I like how you said habit, Moses, because I always like this quote by James Clear: "You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems."
Mm.
And so I think that habit of constantly working on your business or like your systems. So, for peer group, meeting that once a month and coming together, and that is your part of your system to work on your business. Writing everything down and maybe having your meetings with your leadership teams and focusing on your priorities for the week or whatever you're doing is part of your system for working on your business. So, but I'm always looking to hear new ways to tackle that, because as systematized as I am, stuff still gets stale and you keep looking at the same list of things and don't get to it.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Were you going to say something, Scott? I saw that you unmuted and I was waiting for some amazing advice to start pouring out.
No, I just had to grab a quick phone call, so I went off camera a moment.
Dang it. Missed opportunity. Yeah, I mean, that for me, that systematization of just like committing myself to show up in all these different meetings really helps me. I probably overdo it with the accountability, but my daughter just got diagnosed with ADHD. I'm pretty sure she got it from me. So I need that. I need all those people to hold me accountable, and I need to know that somebody's counting on me to be there with something done that week.
There's one area of when you're trying to work on your business and set new direction, implement new ideas. One big task is to get buy-in from your whole team. And that one there, I'd love to hear feedback. How do you guys achieve buy-in? And I guarantee no one here has it mastered yet, but what are some of the victories that help you achieve that goal of getting most buy-in from your people? I know what Scott does. Scott Clintworth. There is a hole in the back of the building, a really big hole, and he puts the bodies there. That's what he does.
Right.
There's no buy-in.
Man, I was interested to hear everyone else's on this too, man. I wish I had the answer for you, Doug, but I definitely do not have the answer.
But the image that I had, someone said it somewhere, the idea that if you cloned yourself, you'd be all set. If I could have 10 of me, I would never probably argue with myself, although Todd admitted that he would argue with himself. But I think that we would run very smoothly because we're all in collaboration with the same goals in mind.
Yeah.
But when your team starts to grow from 2 techs and 2 office people to, exponentially growing, it gets harder and harder to do it. So, how about in Andy's land, Eric? How do you guys focus on getting buy-in?
Well, I was listening for everybody else's genius ways to get that to happen, because it's something that I think at least I struggle with, not so much with the employees, because I'm the GM, so they follow my leadership pretty reasonably. I mean, I think, as any good operation runs, there's some sandpaper here and there, but for the most part, if I have something I think it's a really good idea and other people are doing it, we put it into place and a lot of our people get on board. The issue that I run into is going more towards like our ownership trinity. Really, we have one owner, but then our upper management is a trinity, and trying to get the other two to feel the same way and think the same way, and adhere to things that I think are important. That's where I run into a lot of roadblocks. And so that's that's the struggle that I run into. Not the employees so much. Most of them will get on board pretty quickly to most things, but the ownership, the upper management, trying to get them to feel the same excitement of all the things that I feel whenever I come back from ASTI, and all of the things that I see and and want to try to do. That's where I struggle.
That's a very honest answer, Eric, and I appreciate that, right? Because it does go both ways, right? And ultimately it comes from the top. And if you get support there from the very top, it's so much easier because you're fighting in both directions sometimes. So that is a challenge. I have a whole bunch of things that came from ASTI, and I didn't realize it until I started to sort things like Ginny kind of has coached me to do. And much of it is about trying to get buy-in, right? Like, so you're implementing a new idea, so you're going to create an incentive for the employees so that they can develop a habit of of putting that in front of their radar, or putting that in the technician's own personal script, right? Our CSRs, we have a great script. They're it's meant to be a guideline, but they can't miss the things that are in the script, and they can't go out of order in the script. But our technicians, they have their own script, and they take what we ask them to do and they kind of work their own magic. So an incentive can sometimes develop good habits from it. That's one thing, right? And then obviously promoting it and celebrating it on all channels of your business, that your employees can see when someone buys in and does what that new idea is. You've got to market that and celebrate the ideas and praise the person who did it. And with all those two ideas, it only moves the needle this far. But it's got to be that's something that we have to do, and otherwise we will eventually shut the doors in our brain of trying new things. And sometimes that happens for me, guys. Like the owner is much like Todd there, and he's just like idea man. And as soon as something interesting pops in his head and it's voiced and I like it, I start to hear the choir of technician voices in my head going, no, that won't work. Customers will hate us. And it starts to crowd into my thoughts, and causing me to have a negative opinion about the idea. I'm thinking about all the things that won't work. And this guy's going to say this, and that guy won't even follow the rules, and he's going to do this. So I do need to unclear that and assume the best of my team and celebrate them when they do a good job. And I don't know, buy the tech that completely buys in a Tesla or something and just shock the world. But I got to have Todd money first, so I don't have that to do that. So, yes.
I think and just because I've worked with Todd for a long time, so I can tell you how all that works, and I can tell you that owners are the worst sometimes. But there's this great book called Influence, right? And the big thing is you have to tell people why, right? When you do something, when you're going to do something, you have to tell them why you're going to do it, right? You have to tell them, there's an example in it that says, hey, if I go to the copy machine and if I just butt in front of somebody, they're going to tell me no, right? But if I say, hey, I need to butt in front of you because I need to get on this call, but I only have 1 minute to, so do you mind if I get in front of you? They say, oh yeah, sure, no problem, right? You have to tell people why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that really works, especially when you have all these ideas. When I initially started at Nebraska Appliance or Hometown Hero, I was a tech. Then I went to service manager, and I was kind of a new guy, and I was trying to find my way. And sometimes I had some ideas where I'm like, this would really be a good idea, but you have to explain why it's a good idea too. And you have to also sometimes just kind of do something and show an example of what can happen if you continue on or do what you're doing. So sometimes it's kind of one of those where you're just like, I'm just going to do it, and that way he can see that my idea might be a good one to kind of have more buying into and to go further with. But it's just always why. Why is it? Why should we do that, right? And it takes a while, but once you get there, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And like I said, Todd and I worked for a long time, and I think we have a really good relationship where like he trusts me, I trust him, but we're not afraid to butt heads and say, hey, I think that's the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard you say. we can talk to each other like that.
And I'll just say in front of Todd, that is an admirable aspect of who you are, Enrique, because you're putting yourself out there, to be honest with you. You believe in it, you buy in it, you're now committed to it, and you're doing your job and this thing, and you're just hoping for two thumbs up. And if our visionary is in a space where they're over here, they may not respond in a way that they honestly feel because they're just so distracted with stuff. Or if it's a miss and you knew it was a miss, I feel like that's not as painful as you think it's going to work, but you don't get the buy-in from the guy
Mhm.
above. It's
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. So good job on that.
Mhm.
Check your. I have a blood pressure cuff now, so I'm checking it after different conversations and meetings just to see where my blood pressure lands.
Well, I was gonna just ask, when we have these really big ideas that we come back with, what about engaging your team in the how? Like, I have this idea, I heard about it. How do you think we can make it happen and get some buy-in that way where they're part of the actual creation of the process?
Great idea. That's great.
And then one of the other things that you mentioned, Doug, was, celebrating, and we didn't really touch on quality program and metrics, but you can't really know what you're celebrating or what you're improving if you're not measuring things. So that's always something that I come back with and believe it or not, I'm pretty abysmal at doing it for cavalry because I do it in my hospital job all day, every day. But a quality program is super important to be able to even know what to celebrate.
Mm.
So I keep coming back with new metrics every time I come back from ASTI, and then I think of what a great idea it would be to implement them, and then I don't do it. So that's kind of been my barrier. I'd love to hear how you're actually measuring things and what you're measuring.
While people are collecting their thoughts, I'll tell you from the EOS world, that metric is, you know, there. It's part of your scorecard, and someone is assigned to that metric. So they're kind of responsible for it. They may not be the one that manages the whole aspect, but ultimately, whether we're hitting that number or not, that person is in charge of it. And so if you're not hitting it, and it was a terrible program, when you're tracking it well and regularly, in our case, weekly, then we can make a quicker decision to say, all right, let's pull the plug on that idea. That didn't work out so well. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But imagine lingering something that isn't working and nagging employees and paying money to reach out to customers for something that just isn't a great return on your investment. So and hanging out with Ginny, still working on a goal set and making it achievable, but a bit of a stretch, like I don't want to make it low hanging fruit, but I don't want to make it impossible to reach. That's something I'm still trying to hone as a business person is how do you make that goal just a little bit above where you think it might land, right?
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about, I know Kate Bloom introduced me to the concept of an OKR a couple ASTIs again, which really aligns with your goals. So like your objective and your key results, a little bit different from your KPIs where you're measuring a process and having a lagging indicator where you're looking at it every month or every quarter. And then a little bit different, even so, is your leading metrics, which is more of your scorecard that you were talking about, Doug. So there's some different ways that we can measure our progress in all of the different areas.
Yeah, OKR. So that's great. Thank you for. Surprised Todd didn't post a link for OKRs yet, but no pressure, Todd.
Well, there's a reason, and it's because, the whole OKR framework comes from John Doerr. And I tried to read the book. I tried to listen to the book, and I've almost fallen asleep driving. I
Yeah.
think it's a phenomenal concept presented by your worst math teacher. Super smart guy. He should have had somebody else read the audiobook.
Yeah.
Well, it's not sexy,
Awesome.
but if you have a goal and you have to, it's like a SMART goal. Your OKR is going to be like your actual goal with your time, and then your numeric value or whatever you want to reach. So I, it could be a little less, it could be really boring, but like if you're really excited about what you want to accomplish, then you can put some barriers around how to know when you accomplished it, which is really important.
Yeah.
Todd, just dump the book into the LM thing and do a podcast. You'll be
Yeah,
done in
there you
no
go.
time.
There you go.
Yeah, I can tell you
Solid.
that Kate has read that, and she does have an articulate spin on it. So she explains it because we realized many years ago that the KPIs are really you're measuring what's already happened. What are the OKRs or the indicators of where you're headed, where you can make corrections along the way.
Right.
And it's if you ignore that concept, you're in trouble. You're going to be living life in the rearview mirror, and you don't want to do that.
Right.
So she has found better ways to put it. I won't say sexier ways because it's inappropriate, but she does have a better way of doing it, and she's able to get our people to buy in, and that's always the problem. Ideally, you try to, if you can get your staff to think that they came up with the idea, they'll own it, carry it forward.
Yeah.
If I say it, they're going to try to prove me wrong and why I'm wrong, and it'll never work.
Mhm.
So the last thing I want to do is give them an idea.
Right. Great point. Great point, James.
It's like Inception.
Yeah.
I will say one thing though, with Todd, your expansion in a very brief period of time is really kind of impressive, and I don't know, what do you owe it to? I don't know. I don't want to get off topic. Maybe we'll talk later, but it's just like we were all standing still, and you were on the interstate, flying by us, waving, laughing, having a good go. But it was pretty amazing, really impressive.
I mean, I'll say just briefly so we don't get too far off topic. We were feeling very ambitious. I get bored easily. It was a way to stay busy. It took a while to actually be profitable in those other markets, and it's very expensive to expand. And we
Yes.
utilized our relationships with manufacturers to make sure that we had a steady stream of work when we made the moves. But then it's a multi-year process to dial that back and try to clone what worked in your primary markets and do so without the benefit of 30 years of goodwill and referrals. And one thing we definitely learned is you can't just pick a market, pick a city and say that's next. You have to really do your market analysis, because the first city that we expanded to was really the slowest expansion. The first city we expanded to was Lincoln, who's relatively just down the road from Omaha, and they didn't need us. We wanted to be there, but it wasn't an outside need pulling us in. Whereas when we expanded to like Des Moines or Kansas City, we were largely filling vacuums where like national service providers had closed or pulled out of the market.
Yes,
Asurion, Blue Sky, who was subcontracting for Samsung, things like that. And there was a need, so for one thing, that makes it easier to negotiate, rates and things like that affect your whole account while you make the move. But it also guarantees accessible work when you get there. And, in the beginning, it's just how do we stay busy? And then, then you pivot to how do we make money?
right. Yeah. Because in many years I've been in business, oftentimes I was like, okay, we've done all this work. How do we make money?
Yeah.
It's nothing like posting 5 million and you lost money. How do you do that? I've asked myself that question many times, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah. No, I feel that.
Well, I will tell you that ambitious people are always impressive to me. They're exciting to look from afar. They're great to get to know. Uh, but as someone who's less ambitious, I don't know if that's a bad negative term towards myself. I'm not wired that way. It can be overwhelming to hang out with a guy like Todd. But what I've learned from trying to find a successful space from the way I think and live life is it's so powerful to put one thing in place and do it well and let it take off. And then from there, it starts to kind of build into a machine that runs pretty well. And so a lot of great ideas here today. You have to take one thing, and it's often related to process or goal setting. Put that in place because most of the things that our businesses do on a day to day is take care of customers, take care of employees, put out fires. That's what we do. We correct, we coach. That's the day to day stuff. But what are we doing on making this business work? And my philosophy is how can I make it work when I'm not here? How do I empower people so that they know their role and that the processes are in place? And it just starts by doing one thing and getting it done and evaluating it and moving on. So don't get into despair. We're all not going to look good in glasses like Todd. So we have to make it our own, right? There it is. And pick something. If it's taking your ASCII list and formatting it into groups, like Ginny said, and picking one thing to work on, to pick 5 things that can be done next week, it will make you feel better. It will empower you. It will give you a cause to be inspired to be some people like Todd and Scott and James. There's some pretty Scott Pierce too, some pretty amazing people here. So
one thing that we started doing in our peer group, and I see Greg from my peer group is on here, is a quarterly business review. So kind of coming back to celebrating our accomplishments over the previous quarter. And that has really been satisfying because you kind of feel like you're living in it, you're stuck, you're just plugging away at things, and you don't realize how much you're getting done until you take the time to go back and look at and review the past quarter. So that kind of speaks to, James was talking about OKRs looking ahead, but it's okay to look backwards and just celebrate what you've accomplished, and just kind of as a historian for your business so that you can have a timeline of where you were and where you are now, and then take a critical look at the things that moved the needle quickly for you. Like Todd was talking about, a certain area really wasn't growing as fast as some of the other areas. And when you're taking a critical look backwards, you can assess what really worked and what didn't work and what you want to implement moving forward. So we have found that little piece in our peer group has been really fun and motivating for everybody else if you want to start working on a new project and somebody else is doing it really well.
yeah, that's a great point, Jenny. I feel like quarterly is one of those kind of very comfortable sweet spots where you can get a look backward and forward. And it might, for someone who's not been focusing their business from any timeline other than come to work every day and do the best you can. When you want to shift that, the idea of going to a 10-year goal of I need to make my business sellable, that's just so far out and overwhelming. You kind of got to pick your spot in your timeline, like you suggested, Jenny, that feels good. And quarterly is great. So if March 31st and the first week of April is not in your brain right now to say, okay, first quarter's done. What happened? What were our successes? Where do we need to pivot? Where do we need to, overcome challenges to get back on track? So for me, quarterlies, weeklies actually was how I jumped into it through EOS. A strong weekly meeting made me then go, so I need to, what's the weekly meeting about? It's about the 10-year goal, broken down into 3 years, broken down into 1 year, broken down into quarters, broken down into a weekly meeting. But I had to jump in on the weekly one. That's what really inspired me. But quarterly is perfect, Ginny, because the first quarter, we don't know in most of our territories if that's going to be a successful quarter, an average quarter, or a losing quarter. And it's a telltale on March 31st. So, sorry to ramble.
No.
Any afterthoughts, Mr. Pierce? the microphone to you?
No, sir.
Oh, you unmuted again. You tricked us with the mute thing. I'm sorry. Now how about this, Scott? Can you just give a brief overview of the Pierce family 2-day annual meeting? Like to share anything part of it. I think it would be a great reality show and be inspiration as well as a business teaching tool. How did your 2-day annual meeting go?
Well, it was our first one, so it was a new experience for us, but it was really well. The highlight of it was we worked through the 5 dysfunctions of a team and did all the assessments with that, and then did our leadership team, plus minus through EOS as well. And so there were some challenging times, but it was good. We learned a lot and learned to trust a little more on what that actually means. Not the word you would think of, but
Yeah.
it was really good.
Yeah.
It was heavy, but it was good.
Heavy but good, right? When you left there, it was probably an amazing feeling. But and
Yeah,
you're
but
from
not in a
down
good way
south,
when
so I
we
don't
left.
know if weapons involved down south in annual meetings.
Yes.
They are. Look at Scott, the other Scott, nodding his head up and down.
So did you go to a different location or did you tack it on to Asti?
No, we went to a different location. So it was backed up right to Asti. So it was a long couple of weeks there. So just now getting my nose back above water.
Awesome.
Yeah, I always copy Scott Pierce because you emulate your heroes. So our annual meeting is a 2-day next week, Thursday and Friday off location. And I'll show you my battle scars, Scott, after the meeting and the successes that came from bringing our leadership team together to focus on that 10-year plan to the first quarter that we're going through right now. Hey, Sarah.
Yep.
So that's it, I think. Let's wrap this thing up. Sarah, you have some great encouraging words for everybody?
Well, I do have, I know there were some issues with registration at ASTI, so we have opened up the on-site registration rate, and it is good until the 25th at midnight. So if you didn't get the opportunity to register, you can register at asti.us for the early bird rate that was the on-site rate.
Awesome. And that is Kansas City next year.
Correct, yes.
All right. Anybody, is this their hometown area? Do we have to like kind of bow to you if we're in your area? Is that how that works? Because David Costanza being in Florida, that was very annoying, right? Because we had to kind of honor him because it's his home state stuff, and he doesn't deserve all that anyway. But you know,
I didn't see you honor him at all.
oh, it cost me a lot of money. It
Well,
was
I'm a little offended.
what?
You got him back on screen, Doug.
I wasn't gonna kiss his ring. I could tell you that much. But I did. No, I didn't buy him lunch either. You're right. I missed it, Dave. Next year, Kansas City is your hometown, and I'll honor you better, my friend. Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys, so much. 2 weeks again. And what time is the laundry room in 2 weeks?
Thank you, everybody. It's at 4
4
Eastern.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your contributions and appreciate you guys coming here. Thanks.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Thanks, Doug and Jenny.